Welcome to Coffee and the Bull. Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
In defensive tactics and takedown maneuvers, how to tase people, how to use batons to try to prevent further injury, but also gain a peaceful resolution.
Right.
And people call us for help, right? But typically it's in a physical sense. It's if somebody gets shot or whatever, like we show up, we know how to do immediate medical attention to preserve their life and things like that. Or if we need to apprehend somebody, we know what we can do, and typically cops are pretty good at it.
Yeah.
That's our battlefield, right? And the therapist, she told me, she said in the mind, that's their battlefield. Like that's something that they train for. That's their skill set, and it's not something we train for because it's just not something right. we want to talk about. And she's like, that's her area, and that's where they're good at what they do. And so that it's in the same way that somebody needs somebody's breaking into your house. You call people call the cops. It's the same mindset of, hey, I need help. You're not weak for calling the cops because somebody's breaking into your house. In that same mindset, you're not weak for calling and saying, hey, I need somebody to talk to. I need I'm having this thought or that thought or whatever. And I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand because they think that somebody who's going through looking at self-destruction or whatever, they there's this misconception that, hey, those people are weak or they're misguided or whatever. I don't think that's the case at all. It's like you mentioned, what led you up to that point. You said your words were, "I'm exhausted. I was tired." There was a battle and you were losing it. Right. Or honestly, I'll say you lost it. You lost that battle. The only reason you're here is because a friend decided to swing by who wouldn't normally have otherwise done that, So I would say by all intentions, you lost that battle and God said, hey, not yet, So my question to you would be because that was years ago, and that's, it's how has your life changed? How do you prevent yourself from going back down that road? Have you changed, do you still see a therapist? Or do you have a series of friends that or a pastor or somebody that you confide in?
I since that incident, I started going to church.
Okay.
Where I had stopped going to church during a period of my life, right? So I had about a 15-year absence from attending church.
Okay.
When I told you I went to church that day before I decided to try to check out, like, the last time I had stepped foot in that church prior to that day was 14 years prior. So it wasn't that was something of the norm either for me. Like, right. I couldn't tell you what made me decide to say, look, I'm going to go to this church and go try to get some kind of word or some kind of relief or whatever. That was out of the blue. But since then, I got back into church. I do have a relationship with my pastor. Him and I do speak about different things that do bother me, things that may come up. I learned also too to speak to my friends, to speak to, to have the uncomfortable conversation in the room. Hey man, you got a second? I need somebody to talk to. And I learned to be quite frank about it. I learned it's not an embarrassment. It's more of an embarrassment if I keep it to myself.
Right. Because
if I keep it to myself, I'm only hurting myself.
Right.
Like one of the things for me when I was going through all of that, there was a lot of fear there of asking for help. And, okay, if I ask for help, okay, I'm already struggling with different things, and our paycheck in law enforcement's not the greatest in the world anyway. But if I go and I ask for this help, then am I going to be unemployed now because, he's thinking about doing negative things, so let's go ahead and let's bench him and then let's take his job from him, and then at that point, I mean, you putting salt on the wound there. I mean, so what gives me the reasoning to go ask for the help?
Right.
Because if I feel that if I ask for the help, you're going to sideline me. Like, it didn't stop my work. It didn't stop my performance. all my stuff was up to par. But if I go ask for the help that I feel I need, then I'm sidelined. You know. But I learned that throughout it all, it's okay to go talk to these people. It's okay to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness to ask for the help. You know, the weakness is trying to carry it by yourself and then doing something that you can't take back.
Right.
Was there ever a time immediately following that anybody you knew, we'll even say people that not, to be fair, I've never met anybody who have a negative thing to say about you, but was there anybody after it happened that maybe wasn't understanding or maybe poke fun at you for it, or and what I mean by that is not like the normal joking BSing around, but like somebody who was intentionally negative with you
Or malicious.
there you go, with that situation. And I'm not looking for a name or anything like that, but I'm more so thinking about the guys out there that are worried that when it comes to light that they had that, I don't want to say moment of weakness, but that moment, and then everybody finding out, now all of a sudden they're criticized or ridiculed or put down. Did you have anything like that?
No. Everybody that spoke to me and that I spoke to, and even through word of mouth as to what I heard, you know, because there's going to be rumors or
right, people
shush,
gonna talk.
shush or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, even nobody never, from what I've heard, nobody never said anything negative to me. Nobody said anything derogatory. I did have, you know, like I said, people came and they spoke with me in reference to everything, but everybody was extremely supportive. B, just curious about my well-being and mental health.
C comes after B.
I know. Or, you know, that they just wanted, everybody truthfully was just, they wanted to ensure my safety and
Right.
that I was okay and that I was able to overcome. And they attempted, I ain't gonna say attempted, they inquired to do preventative measures to see what they could have done differently, you know.
Right.
And like I said, that was it was solely on me. That was nobody's burden to carry.
Right.
I made sure that nobody knew. I made sure that all these actions that I made was, no one would ever question it. No one would never say anything because, like I said, it didn't affect my work. It didn't affect my interaction with citizens and the public. Like, so no one truly had any idea, you know, and I never wanted nobody to carry that burden, you know. Hey, look, did I miss this with him or did I miss that? And even when they came and they spoke to me, every one of them told me that they didn't know, you know. And man, I didn't know you was down like that. I didn't know that you was struggling the way you were struggling. I
Right.
was unaware. Man, if I'd have knew, I'd have done X, Y, and Z, you know, like, and so there wasn't, you know, I mean, let's face it, at this point, the cat's out the bag. Everybody knew, you know what I mean? So,
Oh, that made it. I promise you, that made it around the department before you made it to the hospital.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Promise
you know what I mean?
You know how the
Like,
rumor mills go.
110%.
like,
Yeah.
so like, there ain't no point to be embarrassed
Right.
no more.
Right.
You know?
Do you find that it changed? Because you mentioned you got back in, you know, after about 6 months, you took a job back in law enforcement for the department. Do you find it changed when you got dispatched to a subject who was also going through the same thing that, you know, needed a Katie or whatever? Because for me, I know that, like, when I first started, you know, I wanted to go catch, you know, murderers and robbers and
Drug
thieves
dealers
and
and-
rapists
yeah,
and drug
getting
dealers.
all the bad
Like, I
guys.
wanted to get all the bad guys, and then they'd call my radio number. I'd respond, and they're like, "Hey, we need you en route to, you know, subject with suicidal thoughts or whatever." And I'm like, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, I hated it,
Right,
man.
right.
And I was like, "That's a waste, you know, waste of what, you know. I'm not called to do that. I'm the the sheepdog,
Right,
or
right.
whatever,
I'm the real
stupid,
police.
whatever stupid line people want to throw out there. But I found that
male.
as life went on, I found I could relate more to those guys in my thought process.
Right.
And it, where some of the younger guys would be like, I don't want to go handle this call. Like, rather than just showing up, hey, you want to hurt yourself? Yeah, all right, call a Katie and roll them out. Started having conversations with them and honestly just talking to them, and what I found was, I think, or that the conversation that I'd have with them, I would say probably carried as much weight as going to see
A therapist
or something like that,
yeah.
because I wasn't shoving medication down them. I'm not giving medication. I'm not just locking them up till they say, hey, I'm good in my brain. Because like you mentioned, you spent 3 days there, 72-hour hold. Did you do anything in that 72 hours that helped you out?
No.
Of a significance, right?
Of a significance. Whereas if somebody would just listen to what a lot of these guys are saying, it could have an impact on them. So do you find that it changed, the first, say, 5 or 10 calls that you went to regarding a suicidal person, did you change or did you have to mask what you used to be?
You had more sympathy for those individuals,
Yeah.
and sometimes as law enforcement personnel, right? Sometimes instead of talking to people, we talk at them.
Right.
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 And so when you talk at somebody, you're going to get one response. If you talk to them, you'll get a different response. So I don't know necessarily how I handled the situation prior to my incident. More likely than not, I was like probably most people, and I probably talked at
Right,
these individuals. Where after my incident, when I got back and I dealt with these people, I talked to them. And so a lot of people that we deal with in those situations from a law enforcement perspective, if you learn to listen and learn to shut up, and if you ask the right questions, they're going to give you all the answers.
Right.
So a lot of these people, for me, that I dealt with during those incidences, truthfully, they just wanted somebody to talk to and somebody to understand them.
Right.
I was more able to do that after that, I feel, personally, because I had overcame.
I would say you were more willing to do it.
Right.
Versus rather than more able. I think that's what a lot of, unfortunately, we're fallible. Cops are fallible creatures.
Yeah,
we're human,
100%.
And so many times we're distracted. Hey, I want to go get some, Burger King for lunch or whatever, and you're sitting there and you're having to go to these people's houses, and they called for help, and I've been in that spot where it's like I don't want to do this. I got this going on or that going on. I'm down 5, 6 reports already, and so what I found was I wasn't willing to do it at the time. I could have.
Right.
I just didn't want. I didn't think it was
care.
a useful, or I didn't think it was an efficient use of my talents, as
Right.
as my arrogant self, younger self would say. Whereas now, after experiencing, kind of like farmers, I've know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. I find that I'm more willing to do. To go into the, like you mentioned, the uncomfortable conversations with people and say, hey, what are you really going, what's really going on in your brain? Why are you doing these things that you're doing? I know we ran into it before we started the podcast. We started changing how we talk. When we first started having this conversation of, hey, we think this might be a useful tool for guys. We found that while we were at work, we had to change how we were talking to people. Like you mentioned, you're not talking at them. Hey, look, you're doing something dumb. You need to go to the Katie, and they're going, or go with the ambulance. They're going to get you to the hospital and get you some help. Start having conversations with them, And I remember there was one guy that I had, and he was on his way to the store to go buy something to harm himself, and somebody had called in, and I'd pulled him over.
Was this our guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I pulled him over. He's standing at the back of his truck, and he had that. I'm sure he had an instance where a cop had talked at him in the past,
Yep.
and it was like, hey man,
that.
yeah,
he said this was not his first time. That's how
Yeah.
he had become diagnosed with the mental illnesses
Right.
that he had. and had medication for it.
And so he had he's sitting there and he was like, nope, I'm good, and all this other, like he was just, it was like a stone wall.
Yeah.
And it took me literally just, I rested my hands on his tailgate now, not, in his face or anything. And it was just like, hey man, look, I'm here to help you. I promise you, I'm not like any of the other cops you've ever dealt with in the past, And I was like, look, let's tell me what's going on. I'm not here to make fun of you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to do any of this. I said, I want to be your friend right now. And he wound up opening up, and I'm talking about boohooed on the side of the road,
Unglued.
And it was, nobody had ever taken the time to talk to that guy, And I'm not saying that I changed his life. I don't know. I haven't run into the guy, But I would like to say that, that had some type of impact, where next time he does need help, he's not afraid, that he can make the call himself and not somebody make it on his behalf,
Right.
Right.
And that one was a weird situation. I felt. I mean, it was one of ours that we talked about afterwards, and it was a realization for us that we had changed our perspective and approach to that situation.
Where it didn't feel like a wasted call for
right,
service.
it didn't feel like we were just blowing smoke and we were just here to check the block and send them on their way. And that one was, I mean, this guy had a girlfriend, he had parents, he had and everybody was on the phone like, hey, make sure they do this, make sure he goes here, make sure they know this. Like, they were all supportive of the guy. But it was like none of them listened. They'd all just kind of tuned him out. They were like, oh, well, you got diagnosed with all these mental problems and blah, blah, blah. And really all that was is he just had a crap day. Like,
He was having a bad day.
Every single thing that could have gone wrong for that dude at work, with his girlfriend, with his home life, like anything that could go wrong had gone wrong. And he was just like, I'm done. Like, time's expired. It's ready to check out time. And that was all it took. And I remember, like, when we first started talking to him, it was a angry brick wall. And by the end of it, he was like, yeah, I'll sit in the back of your car. Yeah, no, I'll wait for the ambulance. Like, he was just totally nonchalant. Like, he had finally, somebody had took the time to take 5 seconds to just, I'm here, talk. And that's what I was going to ask you was, do you think it would have helped you? I'm not saying you would have done it or you wouldn't have done it, but do you think it would have helped you at any point in time, from the start of your shutting the world off to checking out day? Do you think it would have helped you at any point in time to just unload everything that was in your brain and in your heart to somebody during that time? Not saying you would have done it, not saying you wouldn't have done it, but if you could have done it.
If I would have made that step, yes, it probably would have helped me. And I probably never would have reached that point.
Right.
And that was the problem, though, right? Is the willingness to say, okay, I need some help, and to go out and research and get this kind of help. Because, we sit and we think about what these people, each other, how they going to talk about me, how they going to judge me, and things like that, how they going to see me and whatnot. And all those things play a factor, And if I would have made those steps, we may not be here talking about this today.
Right.
But it was also, I had to be willing to accept that and to say, okay, this is what it is. I'm fighting, I'm struggling. But at the time, too, I felt it was a battle and a struggle that no one else would understand.
Right. Because you felt like you were the only one going through it.
Because I felt like I was the only one going through it. And then, like, if I come to you and I say, hey, John, I'm going through this, right? I don't know what your reaction's going to be, even though you're my friend.
Right.
And sometimes there's a fear there of opening up to somebody.
The rejection.
And things of that nature as well, because we take and we want approval from each other.
Right.
No matter how much we want to fight it and say we don't and whatnot. I
don't need nobody.
And there was a big change too. At that particular point in time, there was a big fear of embarrassment and things of that nature. And once I'd done everything and went through everything, I had to be willing to get the help and accept the help and learn that it's okay to talk to people, to let them into my little world and express what I went through and what I've been through and everything, you know. And look, it's not that I come on here to brag and to say, oh, look, I've been through this, I've been through that. My intention here is to potentially help somebody who's fighting,
Right.
who's struggling, who's going through a similar battle, who thinks that they're the only one out there that's going through this. Because reality is, if you open up to somebody and you talk to them, you'll realize a lot of people that's in your circle that you deal with on a regular basis, or that you know, a lot of these people have went and experienced stuff, and they've overcome many of obstacles and hurdles in their life, and a lot of them are very similar to the same battles and hurdles that I faced and
Right.
that you face and you face, you know. Even though y'all's battle may not have been as
Right.
severe as what mine were, but we all face similar battles in life. And life is not always just sunshine and roses. We all have ups and downs, and, you know, this is what I do to get through my day, and this is what helps me cope. What helps me cope may not help you cope,
Right. Right.
you know. And so, you know, just because something worked for me don't mean it's going to work for you.
Right.
But I can promise you doing nothing doesn't work for nobody,
Right.
you know.
So, Kenny, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. If there's something that as far as Kenny's advice to the listener, who, this guy's driving home from work, or driving home, he's in his car on his way home from work, going to the house, going to the apartment that's got nothing in it, direct TV's cut off or whatever, or he knows that for lack of a better term, his life's not going the way he wants it to go,
Right.
and he's considering these type of actions, or maybe not today, but it might be, he's starting to have thoughts that, maybe next month, if something doesn't get better by next month, this is what I'm planning on doing. Because we've had the conversation, typically it's the people you don't hear about who actually follow through with it.
Right.
It's the
Correct.
people who don't have, they don't reach out and everything else, and so it just catches everybody. So for the guy who, he's purposely making it where nobody knows what's going on, what advice would you give him? Or is there any advice that you can give him other than saying, hey, call somebody?
Well, look, when the day I made that decision to try to check out, it wasn't that I went and I circled this date on the calendar
Right.
and said, hey, look, it's Saturday, July the 15th, like,
Was that the day?
no.
That would have been funny if it was.
But, like, there wasn't nothing circled on this calendar to
Right.
say, okay, this is the day I'm going to go do this stuff, right? It was literally, I had been fighting these battles and battles and battles.
And we're done.
And I literally woke up that morning and was just exhausted. I was defeated. And I truly felt, going through all these things, that it's going to run its course and I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Even though, looking back at it now, I could see where I kept diminishing personally. And so you, as an individual, you know where you're at mentally. You know where
Right.
you're at, psychologically. You know if you have negative thoughts or if you're feeling some kind of way. Now, prior to any of this, you would have asked me, Kenny, would you have ever harmed yourself or anything like that?
No.
Absolutely not. I love me some me. So, we'd have laughed
Nobody
it
loves
off
me
and-
more than me.
Right.
I've heard that several times.
Right.
So, if you're getting that situation, instead of sitting there watching that phone ring, look, these people that are calling you and texting you and Facebooking you and things like that, man, these people care.
Mm-hmm.
Just as when I told you the first thing I done when I got released was I went to everybody and I apologized to them and I told them, hey, this is what happened. I'm sorry.
Right.
I didn't mean to hurt you. This is not your burden to carry. Please don't take this personal. You had no idea. I went to these steps to make sure. Those are the same people that was calling me and
Right.
texting me, Look, answer the phone, pick up the phone, respond to that text message. Don't isolate yourself, because when you isolate yourself and you don't speak to no one, well, then you don't have nobody's opinion and nobody's thoughts, and nobody can help you because you're not asking for the help.
Right.
And it's a big thing to ask for help, because sometimes we think we're the only ones fighting these battles. We're the only ones that ever went through this in life. We're the ones that have ever overcome these things.
Right.
Like, perfect example, right? If you take, and no matter what you're struggling with, there's a story in the Bible that you can relate to in reference to your struggles present day, right?
Okay.
Life hasn't changed that much in all these years, because the same things that went in the Bible and that Jesus had and all this, those are still some of the same struggles we fight today. So if you want to look at it realistically, we fight the same battles that they fought then, and there's help. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Pick up the phone, ask for help. Answer the phone when it rings, ask for help.
Right.
Nobody's going to fault you. Nobody's going to be mad at you. Nobody's going to say, "Oh man, why you calling me with this foolishness?" These people that are calling you and reaching out to you when you watch the phone ring or that you ignore, they want to help you. They want to be there for you. They want to help you overcome whatever battles and obstacles you may face. You may not realize, too, how true of friends you really have until you experience something or until you ask for help.
Right.
Because sometimes we don't realize that, man, I know we're friends, but how good of friends are we really? Like, okay, yeah, you'll let me borrow $20 to go put gas in my truck,
No, I
but
won't.
like, are you, but are you going to come get me if I'm stuck in John's
Right.
yard needing help, right?
Okay. All right. Being a little
I remember
specific
that.
here.
It's funny because
you
it's
don't remember
true.
because you weren't there.
You know, I
'Cause
didn't get
nobody
invited.
called You.
Didn't get invited.
So a lot of times,
You
if you
were-
answer these calls and you help and you ask for this help, nobody's ever going to be mad
Right.
at you. Nobody's going to look down upon you. Nobody's going to think that you're an embarrassment. So you got to take and you got to ask for the help. And like I said, it wasn't that I circled a day on this calendar and said, let's go do dumb stuff. It was, I woke up and I was exhausted and defeated, and I didn't know which way to turn. So that was the way I went. I'm not saying it was a right way and a right decision.
Right.
Obviously it's not. But if I would have answered any one of those phone calls, I may not have got to the point I was at.
Right.
So, and sometimes, to be honest, some of the best people we can talk to about some things too is a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because a stranger knows nothing about us, so they're not there to judge. Some of the hardest people for a lot of us to talk to when we face these battles is a significant other or a family member. If you're facing these battles, talk to a friend. Talk to a real source who's a positive influence somewhere. Talk to that stranger. But make sure that stranger is somebody that's a positive influence somewhere, a pastor at a church, somebody who you may not personally know but has a positive reputation
Right.
in your community. And you'll notice once you speak with them and you ask for that help, everybody is willing to help you, and they will provide you with any of the assistance you need to not feel the way that you feel.
Right. So, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. We should have probably started the episode with a disclaimer that, hey, we're going to talk about some stuff that may be,
It's a little late now, but today's episode
deep
might be a little dark.
down the emotional train. But John failed with his job. So
It's the overalls.
guys, if you're struggling with something, or you sit here and you're like, hey, I don't have anybody to talk to, definitely, like we've posted several times before in the past, call 988. They are the National Crisis Hotline or something like that. Suicide Prevention
Crisis
Hotline.
or something.
So they've got people who are trained to deal with these type of thoughts, these type of emotions.
If you like my overalls,
But
let me know.
also if that's not your jam, that's not the route you want to go. Like Kenny said, find a pastor, find a friend, find somebody to talk to. There are, especially when you feel alone, it's easy to overlook all the people who actually want to see you do good. Right. They want to see you. Nobody wants to sit here and be like, I'm so glad he's gone. Nobody wants to be that way. So, if anything, if you don't want to talk to anybody, shoot us an email at coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. We'll be more than happy to talk to you, carry on conversations with you. If you think this was a great episode,
Yep.
if you think it was a horrible episode, if you want to tell us you don't like the fact that Kenny's wearing a New England's Patriot hoodie, that's fine. We don't like it either. We can't
Yeah,
choose what he wears.
I could
It's
care less.
something about free clothes. I don't know.
On the side note on that though, like Kenny was saying, if you're in that spot, answer that phone or reach out to somebody and seek that help. If you're one of those people on the outside and you notice every time you call, especially if you call Kenny and he doesn't answer the phone, show up at their house. Call them again. Keep going until you get a hold of them. You might be calling them for some nonsense like, hey, I need help with this, or how do I do
Right.
this, or whatever. But you start to notice every time you reach out to the guy that every day at work, if you ever need a hand, he's right there, Johnny, on the spot. But the minute he's off work, you don't exist. Keep reaching
The
out.
FBI calls that a clue.
Right. Clue.
So,
You ever played that board game?
yes. You know what rhymes with clue?
Stupid.
Toodaloo!
God, I walked into that. I hate